Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about not just that activist judges and so on are being appointed to the courts, but the extent of it. That is, A, how many are being appointed to the courts, but also they're not just sort of the journeyman, your average sort of kind of I'll wave a placard every once a month or something. I guess we're talking about the wacko, nutcase, radical fringe of activists who've been given jobs in the positions in the court. Some of these appointments are for life, and they're being sort of very well paid. People again who've been radicalised through the law schools and through activist NGOs and so on. They're being gifted affirmative action, sort of arts law degrees, sociology law degrees, and then elevated into the court to be making judicial decisions, and also administratively in background that the clerks of courts and the administrative personnel and staff within the courts are making sure that the radical activist judges are being allocated to certain cases where they will, of course, produce an outcome that's consistent with the wider ideology. Now, that's not meant to happen. You're meant to have judges, and the judge, unless there's something very specialist about it, but the judge, like in a specialist court, for example, but the next judge is meant to hear the next case. So that prevents bias, and it prevents activist judges being allocated and so on. But that's all broken down now almost completely. So look how in, say, the cases that Donald Trump are involved in, how they always manage to find activist prosecutors, activist judges, activist juries. This is no accident. This is by design. It's not meant to happen. It's meant to be a random effect, and that random effect is meant to prevent activists or people with an axe to grind of getting to hear cases, certain cases, and then applying their prejudices and biases to those cases. But that's all broken down now. So not only have you got these radical fringe wacko activists being appointed there, but they're also, again, being appointed to hear certain cases. I just want to explore a little bit about the arguments sort of that are put forward by the radical social justice crowd as to why the law and facts and so on shouldn't matter anymore, and how it should all be seen as a wider issue of ideological social justice. So these people are oppressed people. They were held in slavery 200 or 300 or 400 years ago. So if they commit a crime today, when we consider that 400 years ago they might have been slaves, what we should do is treat them very leniently today as a restorative justice measure for the crimes done against them 400 years ago. So really we should, and this type of thing, and this is going on, all over the place now in the Western world. And there's a demonstrated reluctance to punish misbehavior if that misbehavior is committed by, or legal behavior is committed by a so-called oppressed minority. Yet the reverse is the case. So the straight white male, for example, is still meant to be fully accountable for their any of their misdeeds, and they have to meet a much higher burden of proof to prove their innocence. Now, there's a court case that I saw a while ago, and I just want to sort of use this to indicate the interplay, because there are now multiple levels of activism really all over the legal system that didn't exist hitherto. And there are all sorts of antics and theatrics like victim impact statements, things like that, which began maybe to indicate to the criminal just what this is the impact it's had on these people. To you it's just a home invasion, or to you it was just an assault in the street to grab a handbag, but look at the impact. So it had its place outside of an ideological sort of piece of theatrics, but nonetheless, there are various things in the court that are very concerning. Now, let's suppose you've got an activist judge, and there's a activist, someone's the white guy is supposed to have done something wrong, very low burden of proof, just an accusation really against him, and there's a psychologist who's say it's a rape, say we'll call it a rape, for example, or an alleged rape. Now, the burden of proof that the accuser had to make was very, very low, and there's an activist prosecutor or district attorney. They've decided to run with the case, even though there's no physical evidence. There's no DNA evidence. There's no evidence of force or threat of force being used. There's really nothing. There's just she's decided to say a few months after the event that really it was kind of a technical rape because her consent didn't really count. That was it. Or she withdrew her consent seconds before he ejaculated or something like that. So very, very low burden of proof. But because it's seen through an ideological lens now, there's all these evil oppressor men oppressing victim women. So we have to start prosecuting. We've got to get prosecuting. We've got to get those white boy fucking stuff. So very ideological, the thing, radical feminists. So now if you didn't have a radical feminist or an activist prosecutor, they would look at it in very dispassionate terms to say, okay, there's no physical evidence. There's no evidence any force was used. Why didn't you come forward the next day or the days following? If there was no force used, if there was no threat of force, and if there was no DNA of any form of force being used, how can you claim to be so traumatized you couldn't come forward? If there was force used and this and that, okay, then you'd be traumatized, but there wasn't. You knew who the guy was. You went to his place willingly. You invited him. We've got the texts here that you invited him to your place and this and that. And we've got the text here saying, I want you to come over and fuck me hard. And well, I've got all that. So you can't claim that you're raped or use some very sort of esoteric technical argument that really it was kind of rape because you didn't fully really consent, kind of, maybe. That's not a case we're going to take to court. Now, if the guy pulled a gun on you or this, sure, okay, let's take it to court. That is a serious matter. It's a serious offence. Let's prosecute it. But it isn't that. So the case is in court here. So in order to bolster their case, their very flimsy case against the straight white male, they've called in a psychologist, and the psychologist has interviewed the woman, and the psychologist is meant to be giving an opinion, a professional opinion to the court, to the judge, that the woman was telling the truth, and that she was indeed, in her view, raped by this evil fascist Nazi straight white guy. Now, and this is the rub in these sort of cases, and we need to understand is it's all a bunch of activists interacting and running cover for each other. So the prosecutor, the police officer assigned to the case is an activist, specially trained activist. That rape is everybody's getting raped. All women are getting raped all the time. That there is gazillions of cases of evil fascist Nazis raping, all white, by the way. Fascist Nazis raping them and getting away with it just because they're white privileged straight white males getting away with it. Those damn fucking Nazis, we're going to bring them to book. So this female police officer who's been radicalized to the shit, and she's now goes together puts together evidence that you wouldn't pass evidence that no one's obviously reviewing her work because the evidence is so piss poor that you wouldn't bring it to court. But the prosecutor, of course, has got nothing. The prosecutor is an activist and wants to bring it to court and use taxpayer money to indulge her fantasies and ideological fantasies. And they've got this psychologist who's interviewed the woman. Now, the psychologist is a radical gender studies activist with lots of activist online postings saying how much she hates straight white men, how rapists are everywhere, men must be prosecuted, and let's do away with this bullshit need for evidence, and if you have to tell a few lies and a few fabrications to make sure the guy gets convicted and sent to prison, hey, there's nothing wrong with that because you're fighting back against evil oppression and gender and white privilege. It's just a miasma of evil whiteness. And so it's a white woman, by the way, the psychologist. So she's got all these postings online. Now, the lawyer representing the man as being accused, he wants to bring up this. So the psychologist is in the witness box giving he's a fucking Nazi. He did it. And she's going full full tilt on this. So the lawyer representing the man wants to say, look, you're a radical activist. Don't tell us that you're giving objective, impartial, factual, or accurate information. I mean, it's an opinion, so I suppose you can't push the factual thing. But don't tell us you're impartial here, that you're looking at this impartially. You are a radical activist with inventing serious anti-male, anti-straight white male hatred here, and engaging in the most prejudicial assumptions about male behaviour and women's victimhood and so on. So he wants to do that, and I understand you're a gender studies major. Could you tell us about the gender studies? Doesn't the gender study? The judge won't allow it. The judge instantly sees where it's going to go and runs cover for the psychologist. So they're deliberately and willfully using the in my view, the perjury of the psychologist, because it's useful to the case and the outcome they want to get. And because of that, the activist judge, who is a radical actor, still is, and who was assigned to hear this case. And that's no accident either. That was a piece of activism by the court administrative functionaries. And so then the lawyer tried to say, well, look, these are, I've got these postings from online that you've made. Judge won't allow that. And then using technicalities, for example, some of these things were logged in as evidence. But the judge argues that, oh, no, it wasn't logged in properly. Oh, no, the filing wasn't proper. So no, I'm not going to allow that. I won't allow that questioning. You don't have to answer that. And the judge is actively and aggressively interceding to run cover for the psychologist. So the judge will not allow any questioning about the psychologist's extremely prejudicial behavior and their attitudes to rape and to straight white males and so on. Judge won't allow any of that. Now let's look at the reverse, though, where the guy has made postings about he likes looking at I don't know, looking at hot chicks in tight clothing or something like that. Pretty sort of basic guy stuff. It wasn't nothing about rape or whatever. But that is allowed. The judge won't stop that. That's the hey, go for it. Go for it. This is anti the straight white male, so I'm going to allow all of it. Anything that protects the straight white male, I will allow none of it. But this, so the judge then allows this, if not showing considerable relish in it. But then there's the guy says something like, when he's out nightclubbing, he likes looking at chicks in short dresses or something like that, low cut tops or something. They're out nightclubbing, for goodness sakes. That's how people dress when they're nightclubbing. So if you like looking at girls in hot looking outfits, then that means you really are a rapist. It means you're an oppressor. It means you're a fucking misogynist, fucking Nazi, and that's all the proof we need to put you in prison, you motherfucker. So a very activist court case and very activist hearing. Now, if the guy was wealthy, he could sort of kind of shrug it off a little bit. So I'll take it to an appeal court. I'll take it to the High Court if I have to. But this is an outrageous perversion of justice and perversion of due legal process, the rules of evidence, and so on. But he's not a rich guy. Just defending him in this case alone is going to probably bankrupt him or close to it. So even if he wins the case, he's going to be financially ruined. She's allowed to indulge her fantasies as all the other people are at the taxpayer expense. They don't have to find the money to do this. And they're already all on the government payroll. So they're all being used to go after this guy who's committed no crime. So it transforms from being an actual crime, such as real rape, like holding the gun to the head and all that sort of, and then it crosses over that line into an ideological crime. So, well, you didn't commit the rape, but you're part of a class that is evil and oppressing, misogynist, and da 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 da. And if you even look sideways at a woman at any time in your life, we're going to say that's misogyny, and we're going to say misogyny means rape, and we're going to say rape means that. And so they're able to do that ideological, well, if you did this, then that, then that. And if you scratch your nose on a Sunday, we saw a piece of film when Hitler once scratched his nose before he did a speech, and you scratched your nose yesterday, that means you are Hitler, and therefore so they do these huge ideological leaps. Hitler drank water when he's thirsty, and you drink water when you're thirsty, therefore you are Hitler. But the thing here is how the parts interact with each other. So the activist prosecutor, the activist police officer. Now, how they became radicalized or activists is almost by the by. But an activist, a radical activist, has been put in that job instead of an impartial person. And the view is that someone impartial who looks at the evidence and the facts probably won't prosecute it because there's no evidence. So, I mean, that's hardly surprising. So they don't want the evidence and the facts to matter. They want the activism to matter. And this is it. Now, I've had a look at some surprising outcomes of cases, some quite serious, involving murder, or someone's been bashed so badly that they've been hospitalized for years and that sort of thing. And typically it's so often now it's come down to an ideological take on things, not a legal take. So there's often the facts aren't even in dispute. So here's a case where a black guy he's got an unregistered car, and he's also his own license. His license has been cancelled for drink driving or whatever it was. So now he's driving around and he's spotted by a police car. They run a check on it. They find his unregistered vehicle, which's got a defective light as well, defective tail light. And the owner is a guy who's also got a cancelled license. So they go to make a chase on him, and he decides, instead of stopping, and he decides he's going to go off at high speed. He's got a V8 car, so it's a bit of a serious chase. It's fairly late at night, so the streets aren't. It's not like it's gridlock traffic or something. So the chase goes on for quite a while. I mean, other police cars are brought in, and before you know it, it's turned into a major incident. The guy, of course, is racking up all sorts of violations here. The guy's going away. He's a black guy. He's going away, and he's doing 100 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone. Yes. And this goes on but anyhow, eventually they catch him, and so they read him his rights, try and arrest him, and they put him in handcuffs. He refuses to be handcuffed, and it turns into a punch up and a scuffle. He's on the ground. He's wrestling with police on the ground and refusing to. Then they try and taser him and say, "Stay down." He won't. He tries to run off. They catch him, and so resisting arrest. I mean, a long list of violations now, assaulting police, and so given his refusal to sort of comply with legal police directives, they become sort of violent with him in order to get him to stop trying to run away and stop moving, and so they can get the cuffs on him. And so they pull out the nightsticks, whatever they call them, truncheons or something, and they hit him a few times. They keep on hitting him until he stops trying to get away. But the argument is that when it comes to court, the whole thing's about the police brutality, not about the crimes. And they just let the crimes he committed. They don't. Okay, we accept all the crimes he committed. We just accept it all. We're not fighting them. We're not even. But we're saying those crimes that he committed, not paying the registration, running away, are because of a racist society and because of a prejudicial society that keeps blacks down and oppresses black people. So we're going to say all those crimes, ideologically, we just throw them all into the oppression basket. So they kind of don't really count anymore. So really the issue here has nothing to do with all the crimes that the black guy committed. The crimes are what the police did to the black guy. Those are the crimes. And they accept, the lawyers representing the black guy, they accept all the efforts to subdue the black guy and put the cuffs on him, right until the police the police officers lost their patience and kept on hitting him till he stopped trying to run away, get with the truncheons or the nightsticks, whatever they're called. And so that the whole case now concentrates on that. It doesn't concentrate on the crimes or doesn't even look at the crime. They're just swept aside. No, that's it. Okay, no, all of that's due to oppression and and racial prejudice. And so in the end, it turns into a legal case about those last few seconds when the police again lost patience and kept hitting him until he stopped moving. Now, had he just complied with the police request to stop and when he was flagged down first off, none of this would have happened. But as far as the legal system, the activist legal system is concerned, this guy is a victim. He's not a criminal. He's not a lawbreaker. He's a victim. And the activist judge, again, the activist lawyers, and the whole thing is activists all operating with each other, and also again the court administration. There wasn't anywhere, and not any of the people involved were independent. Independent sort of, there's no independent application of the law, no impartial application of the law, no legal process. The whole thing was given over to ideology. Now, there have been a few cases in Chicago and other places where there have been activist DAs and so on put in place. Now, you look at an exact same case where a white person is straight white guy is brought in, and then where a black guy is brought in, or a black person is brought in, and you see the very different. Even when the black person's a career criminal, they're still put back on the street, whereas the white guy is going to suffer a much greater penalty, even though it might be a first offence. But some cases here where I've been looking, the judge, as soon as you see the case, you know that any judge finding Donald Trump guilty will be an activist Democrat judge. You just know it. Now, you shouldn't know that because the law understands no political leanings. The law is meant to be utterly impartial, utterly devoid from politics and ideology and activism. The law is meant to be completely devoid of that. But instead, we now have the reverse, where the law is so drawn into and integrated within ideological fanaticism that we no longer have a legal system anymore. And on top of that, we have all the main parts of the legal system are all of them corrupted by activism. So a case where a black guy, a career criminal black guy, has committed a murder, and the activist judge releases the black guy after he's been arrested. Now, sure, the case hasn't been fully heard yet, so there may be evidence, but now the judge happens to be a black lesbian activist with a history of hysterical activism. I mean, you wouldn't put someone like that in, you wouldn't just give them a judge's job, but these people who are street activists, that they're low IQ, insane street activists for LGBTQ issues, for black issues, for whatever, feminist issues, race issues. They're being put into courts, as judges and other officials in court at staggering numbers. Now, there was recently in one sort of court system, legal area, or one particular part of the legal system, where the judges were hiring activists to write the reasons for judgment. So once the judge makes a decision, Billy Bob's guilty or not guilty or whatever it might be, there's some weeks later, sometimes longer than that, the judge releases what are called reasons for judgment. So this is the evidence that the judge supposedly relied upon to reach the conclusion that they did, that Billy Bob was or wasn't guilty. So, or Jimmy Jack, whoever it might be, Billie Jean. Now, when you read those, they read like a Marxist, a school kid doing a Marxist diatribe. They read they're laced with Marxist sort of statements and utterances and rationale and so on. So what was happening is judges were hiring, or the court, the court administration was hiring gender studies activists and activists generally, but particularly gender studies activists, and giving them jobs as like a clerk in the court. But their job was to write up the judgment. So the judge would say, well, the reason I find Billy Bob guilty is because of A, B, C, and D. And then it's up to this activist, and they're all young girls, by the way, or gay guy, either gay guys or young girls, like college kid age, was to write up the reports. And of course, their only understanding of the world is the activist, Marxist activist style gender studies language that they're exposed to in college. Then they've been given the job of writing up these reports or these reasons for judgment. And of course, they're pieces of hysterical Marxist nonsense. And they're putting in, supposed facts that don't exist. But they're also using the assertion methodology that the genders. We all know that straight white males are Nazis. We know that as Billy Bob drinks water and Hitler drinks water, that Billy Bob is therefore Hitler. We all know that he really wanted to bring a swastika into the court. And so that using this assertion basis, so the reasons for judgment bear no resemblance to any reality or much of any of the evidence. And so, again, I want to highlight this is the level of it now. Our body politic, the law societies, all of the watchdog bodies that once existed to prevent this very sort of thing from happening, are all missing in action or are themselves infiltrated and have become radical activist hellholes. But this is where we are. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.